This is a reply podcast regarding Adnan Syed's murder case. We are here to talk about our opinions on Asia McClain, a friend of Adnan who claims to have seen and spoken to him at the library on the day of the murder.
To set us on track, this murder took place on January 13, 1999. It was theorized that Adnan had murdered the victim Hae Min Lee around 2:36 p.m. School had been let out early that day. I have Asia McClain's letter to Adnan right after Adnan was arrested. This letter was dated March 1st, 1999. It reads, "Dear Adnan, I hope I spelled it right. I know that you can't have visitors, so I decided to write you a letter. I'm not sure if you remember talking to me in the library on January 13th, but I remember chatting with you. Throughout your actions that day, I have reason to believe in your innocence. I went to your family's house and discussed your calm manner towards them. I also called the Woodlawn Public Library and found that they have a surveillance system inside the building. Depending on the amount of time you spend in the library that afternoon, it might help in your defense. I really appreciate if you would contact me between 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. or 8:45 p.m. to an unknown time. My number is. More importantly, I'm trying to reach your lawyer to schedule a possible meeting with the three of us. We aren't really close friends, but I want you to look into my eyes and tell me that you're innocent. If I ever find otherwise, I'll hunt you down and whip your ass. Okay, friend?" Asia claims in the letter that she had talked to Adnan in the library. The contents of the discussion that day were really well illustrated in the affidavit. On point 8, it says, "At around 2:30 p.m., I saw Adnan Syed enter the library. Syed and I had a conversation. We talked about his ex-girlfriend, Hae Min Lee, and he seemed extremely calm and caring. He explained that he wanted her to be happy and that he had no ill will towards her." On point 9, it says, "Eventually, my boyfriend arrived to pick me up. He was with his best friend, Gerard Johnson. We left the library at around 2:40. Syed was still at the library when we left." Point 14 says, "I mailed him 2 letters to the Baltimore City Jail, one dated March 1st and the other dated March 2nd. In these letters I reminded him that we had been in the library together after school. At the time when I wrote these letters, I did not know that the state theorized that the murder took place just before 2:36 p.m. on January 13, 1999.
Point 33 says, "I contacted Syed's lawyer, Justin Brown, on December 15th, 2014, and told him my story. I told him I would be willing to provide this affidavit." And point 37 says, "I have reviewed this affidavit with my attorney before providing it to Syed's attorney, Justin Brown."
Adnan was still in the library when Asia left at 2:40, as shown on point 9. However, the state theorized that the murder took place before 2:36 p.m., shown on point 14. One of these points cannot be true. It's either that Asia was telling the truth and Adnan was still in the library, or she isn't and Adnan really did kill Hae Min Lee. It's really interesting how the state did not take this affidavit into consideration.
One of the things that I personally found extremely interesting is how similar both of Asia's affidavits are to each other, almost 15 years apart.
Adnan's innocence is very convincing in both of Asia's affidavits. However, we are stuck in a predicament. If Asia's affidavit was 100% facts, then Adnan should be considered innocent according to the most recent affidavit regarding points 8, 9, and 14.
Asia's affidavit, dated back to 2000, does not seem to be different. The last sentence of this affidavit says, quote, "Spoke to Adnan briefly, and we left around 2:40 p.m., end quote. These few words are very similar to the most recent affidavit she wrote on January 13th, 2015. Asia seems to be telling the truth about what happened that day. It's very convincing that she is sticking to it in her affidavit. If she did lie about when and where she saw Adnan, I think there would be major differences in the two affidavits."
Once again, all 37 statements on the most recent affidavit were fact-checked by Syed's attorney, Justin Brown. While researching this topic, we wanted to get an opinion and a point of view from someone who witnessed the situation herself.
We contacted Rabia Chowdhury through email asking for her point of view on Asia McClain and her written affidavit. We asked her 3 questions regarding her opinion on Adnan and his case. Also, we wanted to hear her point of view on the affidavits of Asia McClain.
We asked her, "What is your opinion in regards to this case?" She replied, quote, My opinion is, and always has been, that he is innocent and has been wrongfully convicted, end quote. We also asked her, what is your point of view on both of Asia McClain's affidavits? Her response was, quote, all of Asia's statements, including her letter and her discussion with me when we met, have been consistent. She has repeated the same thing for almost 16 years. Her affidavits will be a great help going forward in our appeals, end quote.
Then we asked what we wonder about the most. Do you think that Asia's affidavits are strong enough to show Adnan's innocence? Quote, I think the affidavits are strong enough to show his innocence. If we are to believe that she disappeared right after school, and we know he went to track practice after he saw Asia, his time after school becomes accounted for, end quote. The one thing that I found extremely interesting is that during the trial, they figured out that Hae-Min Lee bought food at the concession at 2:25, and by 2:36, she was dead. So if Asia's affidavit is in fact false, that gives Adnan only 11 minutes to have killed Hae, which seems like a challenge. But if it is true, that means that Adnan was in the library with Asia during that 21-minute window from 2:15 to 2:36 where Hae was murdered.
We thought it would be important to mention that Adnan's case was recently granted an appeal. During the appeal, the main focus will be on Asia's affidavits. What Rabia said earlier about Asia's affidavits really reflects the case about the current Adnan. We completely agree with Rabia about Asia's affidavits. However, whether the affidavits are really strong enough to convince the judge is hard to guarantee.
This has been another Serial Reply.
Thanks for listening.
Serial is brought to you by Jayden+David Production. Cha cha